Courage, vision, resilience. It's more than just a journey. It's a universe of endless possibility, where a single idea can change a man's life, creating new worlds from the ground up. I am Ricky. I'm your guide through the epic stories of Web3 pioneers. Join me and enjoy the podcast. The Tales of Web3.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to the Tales of Web3, Season 2, Episode 7. Today we are welcoming Michael, the co-founder of Zero Gravity Labs, the hottest AI cross-blockchain project in the entire space. How are you, Michael?
Doing super well. How are you doing?
Very, very good. I'm excited to have you. And the most exciting part for having you in this podcast is like you have like a very unique background, right? Unlike a lot of the guests that I hosted. Like you actually started a Web2 business before. You raised more than $100 million. If I remember correctly, it's $130 million, which is a lot of money, right?
Yep, that's about right.
And YC, you're top unicorn. Wanted to dive into it, but my first question for today is, what do you think is your superpower as a founder?
I love that question. I think there's a few, but one that I use a lot in the Web3 space is to make very complex subjects like seem simple and really explain the so what behind it. Oftentimes when we talk about crypto, and I think it's actually hurting the industry kind of long term, is to overemphasize the technological aspects. Like, why does this ZK proof work better than this ZK proof? Or why is this verifiable algorithm like 10% faster than another one? At the end, though, what people really care about is the so what, like, what does this mean for me? Especially if you want to attract more developers and application builders. And so need to break it down in simple, easy to use terms that people can grasp right away. So I think that's one superpower I use a lot. And then a bunch of other ones just around leadership and ensuring everyone's like super motivated and excited to be part of a mission that really resonates with them personally, and making sure that they feel really bought in and taken care of by that mission and by me. So I'll stop at those two.
Thanks for sharing that. What do you think is the majority difference, or how do you feel like starting a company in Web2 and starting a company in Web3?
Yeah, Web2, the infrastructure stack is a lot more developed. And so in many ways, basically, you can follow a lean startup playbook. Like at Stanford, I took a class called the Lean Launchpad with Steve Blank, and it's a very well-established methodology. You talk to a bunch of end users, you try to understand what they really care about, you get outside of the building, you build your MVP, you see if there's a match, and then you iterate super fast. So basically from ideation to product to adoption can be as short as 2 weeks, literally. That's very, very different in Web3. You have to go through like
2 weeks. That's kind of crazy. That's crazy fast.
Yeah, that's some YC companies do it. When we did the class, that's literally we had revenue in 2 weeks, just because we iterated on the concept like super, super fast.
Holy.
So yeah,
it's a complete different story.
Completely different story, very different impact, and kind of thinking, because the token value doesn't really measure the revenue that your company is bringing or the earnings per share, so to speak. It's much more about how much does a community believe in you and support your particular project and this particular narrative. And so it's like the opposite. You basically pick the right narrative, you pick the team that has the domain expertise around it, then you raise financing, and then you build. So it's like exactly the opposite from Web2.
And that's the most beautiful thing about it, right? There's no playbook. You have to, no matter which kind of project, no matter which like aspect of Web3 or AI you're building, like you're literally trying to figure out like a new, completely different narrative and business model. And that is the fun part.
Yeah, it's super fun. I love the deep tech aspects of Web3, and then especially being at the intersection of AI and Web3, we have to consistently almost relearn every month because there's some new breakthrough that's coming either on the blockchain side or on the AI side. And for me, that's just super exciting.
This is awesome. Speaking of AI cross Web3, I feel like I've seen a lot of projects, right? Just they are like a Web3 native projects. They just put in the AI concept into their projects, right? Which a lot of people like to do because they believe it will 2x, 5x their valuation and making the narrative more sexier. But I feel like a lot of projects like you guys, like Vana, right? There's a lot of good ones. Like you guys are actually trying to use blockchain to solve the part of AI that traditionally or before cannot be solved, or combining AI and blockchain, trying to solve some problems that you've seen, right, that cannot be solved before. Tell us a little bit more about Zero Gravity Labs, right? I feel like people can still be well educated about what you guys are building. Obviously, it's not just a blockchain. Obviously, there's like the cool stuff. It's not just a decentralized AWS, but please share a little bit more.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because what most projects are doing, they're basically say like, okay, let me just use a centralized AI kind of resource or solution and then apply it to Web3. So for example, you see
Exactly.
it with Based Agent on Base. They were like, oh yeah, we now can have agents on Base. And then you look at beyond the hood and you're like, okay, what's this running on? And it basically says OpenAI Swarm. I'm like, okay, that's not really that's not really decentralized. That's not
It is
permissionless
not.
nor
It is not.
decentralized. Yeah. So how do we actually create something that is living up to the ethos of Web3? And that's really why we exist. And in order to do that, we basically saw that you actually have to rebuild the entire stack. So there's a hardware layer, then there's a storage network, there's a compute network, and then you have to have a service marketplace as well to basically replicate the same experience that OpenAI has. So in a way, it's very complex because we have to build the ground infrastructure to support this level of workload. So I'll give you an
100%.
example. On the storage side, you can't use decentralized storage for AI workloads today because either the tokenomics aren't right, or the retrieval rates don't work for AI workloads, or the data types that are supported are only log data types, not key value store or transactional data types. And so we basically have to literally re-architect the complete storage network from scratch to actually make this fully decentralized and on-chain AI a reality. Then on top of that, well, how do you then ensure that you have the data throughputs necessary to have on-chain compute? So, for example, if you go into a data center and you've got NVIDIA InfiniBand, you're dealing with hundreds of gigabytes per second in throughput. Now, Ethereum does 80 kilobytes per second in throughput. Some of the best DA layers do 10 megabytes per second in throughput. So you're like a million times off from where we
Yeah.
need to be.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah. So how do we then we have to build that architecture. And then on top of that, then we have to figure out, well, then how do we do inference in a verifiable way? Because in a decentralized setting, somebody can basically intercept the communication and then say, hey, yes, I'm running a Llama 3 450 billion parameter model, but what they're actually doing is they're using a consumer GPU and running a 7 billion parameter model. And so very hard to tell. So you need the verifiability aspect in decentralized AI. And so again, we have to build that whole paradigm and make sure that it can be completely permissionless. Most deepends today are actually not permissionless. You have to go to them and say like, I need a GPU cluster. Can you provision this for me?
Yes.
That's not Web3. So yeah, you have to solve some like really difficult like infrastructure problems before this is a true reality. And so yeah, we basically had to attract the most brilliant minds, both from kind of the East and the West. So MIT, Stanford, and like Tsinghua in China and so on, multiple Olympic gold medalists to actually figure a lot of these types of things out.
This is so cool. You got a hardcore team and you are a hardcore entrepreneur yourself. I like that. Okay,
It's
okay.
important.
So so
We're
so
solving huge problems. So like we need that level of team to compete with what we call closed AI, because open AI ironically is closed AI, because you basically are trusting one entity to tell you, okay, well, all the data we got is accurate. Like we made the right censorship decisions. These models are running well in production. There's not going to be any issues and leaves. You have to like trust one entity. In the decentralized setting, you can verify for yourself. It's completely transparent. And so we need that team in order to have a strong counterbalance to closed AI.
that's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. And I feel like as an entrepreneur, right? For you, you've probably been an entrepreneur for many years already. As an entrepreneur, you have the highest growth rate among, let's say, all the human beings on this planet, right? Which is really important because you will be able to touch base on like your own, I would say, like the edge, right? In 2024, what is the biggest lessons that you learned this year, right? That you think is really valuable? It's almost like a truth or wisdom that you think like people who listening to this podcast can be benefited as well. But it has to be this year, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think every year there's huge growth amounts, and you're absolutely right.
Yes,
Like the
yes.
entrepreneur I was 10 years ago is very different from the entrepreneur I am today, because I was just had no idea what I was doing 10 years ago. So I figured out, let's just say through reinforcement learning.
That's
But
cool. That's
this
cool.
year particularly, I've learned that true power as an entrepreneur comes from true alignment with yourself. So if you're truly in touch with, here are my needs, here's what I care about, here's what I stand for, and at the same time I hold the needs of others and I care for them and I care for what they stand for, that's true power. And when then that power is unleashed on a mission that's really important for the world, nothing can stop you. And so that is an amazing lesson I learned this year.
This is deep, man. Can you let's let let's dive a little bit deep in that, right? Like, give me a story or example, like how that learning come into reality, right? How are you able to get that piece of wisdom or lessons learned, right? Like by
I
using vivid example or a story.
Yeah, I've been working a lot with EFT coach, which stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. And essentially, I tap into the feelings that I have and hold in my body. And sometimes when I think about a specific thing or outcome or thing that I want to do, some emotions might come up. Like it may be fear, it may be anxiety, it may be excitement. And then if there's some anxiety and excitement that comes up, then we go into that. It's like, okay, let's explore that. What is that connected with? And oftentimes it ends up being something in childhood. Like, I don't know, I was 2 years old and I broke an ornament of a Christmas tree, and I ended up getting like a 10-minute lecture by my grandpa. And I was like so shocked about that it sat like really deep as some like trauma in my body. And recognizing that some of the fears that I was getting were coming from that particular event. And so I essentially, oh, I think it's trying to reconnect. Is it working?
I think we may have like an internet interruption. Let's wait for a few seconds.
Okay, let me reconnect.
Nice,
Can
you're
you hear
back.
me?
You're back.
I'm
Yes,
back.
yes, it's good. We were talking about like it always associate or goes back to like a childhood memory, right? With like the certain emotions that we are feeling right now.
Yeah, so I've been working with this EFT coach, and essentially sometimes the fear that comes up is triggered by a certain emotional past, an emotional past that hasn't been fully process, because the body needs to process all kind of negative things that come in and out of it. And so in this particular instance, some of the fear that was coming up was related to a story that I had when, or an episode that I had when I was literally 2 years old. And it was basically my grandpa, for whatever reason, gave me like a 5 to 10 minute lecture because I broke a Christmas ornament. And it sat like trauma in my body. And then through using kind of, I think it's like an emotional freedom technique is what it's called, through like tapping on different pressure points, I was able to actually process the full emotion and then let it pass through my body as a result. And so then I was like, oh, okay, I learned something from this. And I learned that if I was older, I would have dealt with the situation very differently. I would have actually tried to understand, like, where's my grandpa coming from? Why is he doing this particular thing? And then also be in alignment for myself and basically stand up for myself and say, like, hey, listen, I'm 2 years old. Like, thanks for the lecture, but
Like
like
why?
mistakes are going to
Yeah, yeah,
happen.
why?
Yeah. And so through that experience, I just was able to process some like stuck emotions, some stuck kind of past memories, and then I got more in alignment with my own power in that situation. And then I wasn't powerless. I wasn't like looking at it as a, hey, this is a memory that I can't do anything about, I'm in fear, versus, oh, actually, this seems pretty unreasonable. I would have acted very differently if I was my age right now. And so that was super helpful. And then it got me more into alignment with what I stand for. It got me into alignment that I matter as a human being, and that I'm not defined by events that happened in my past. And so very, very, very powerful kind of cathartic moment for me.
This is beautiful. Thank you for diving deep on that such personal side of you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
Really appreciate. Okay, okay. Next question is a really interesting one. I would love to get some of your hot takes, right? Controversial hot takes that you have lately about Web3, about AI, about blockchain cross AI, about whatever you have, right? But the key thesis is I would like it to be the hottest you can get.
The hottest I can get. How about I warm up to it? I start with something that's warm, and then I get to hot.
Let's do it. Yes, let's do that.
Okay, awesome. So, hot take. We talk about too much infrastructure in Web3. So I already mentioned that. Again, people care about the so what, like what do I get from it? And that's actually the name behind zero gravity comes from that. The idea is that it's frictionless, and that the infrastructure should actually live in the back for the end user. So I fundamentally believe that, because in some cases, yes, it's important to get to a state where this industry and the applications are super usable, have very little friction. But then we don't need to keep talking about the infrastructure in the back. Then it becomes much more about what does this enable for me in my life. So that's one warmer take. Another kind of hot take is, I think that people outside of crypto misunderstand meme coins. Many people just think like, oh, it's like gambling, and
Pumps and
why should I
dumps.
be so pump and dump? Like, why should I be associated with it? But there was a really good video by Murad on it, where it's much more than just gambling. It's actually a sense of belonging. It's like, oh, I have a sense of entertainment, I have a sense of fun, I have a sense of like
100%.
connection to this particular group that cares about this meme, and I'm going to support this all the way because, hey, this reflects who I am as well. So there's much more social value behind memes than most people think. Most people just think like, oh, it's like pure gambling, but actually there's a lot more to it. And that's why you see like really weird and fun experiments like Truth Terminal creating a meme coin called Goat, and then a lot of people basically buying into it because it's like the sense of, wow, this is what the future holds. Like, there's literally an AI that created something, and I can be a part of that. So it's like an ownership type of mentality. So yeah, hot take for you there.
I like that. And I truly resonate with that. I think memes are the best way to start a cult, right? Like let's not put it in community, but a cult. People who believe in similar stuff, and also like people who think the meme coins are all about pumps and downs. It's actually true for like I would say 95 or not, even 99% of the meme coins, but that 1% who can actually break through, right? Let's break through 10 million, 100 million market cap, right? These are the ones who with real innovations, with true
Yeah.
people who believe in that similar, no matter it's AI, no matter it's a Dodge, right? So I really like that. And true meme coin with a true value, with a true innovation, will be able to gather around people who believe in its value and belief,
Yeah,
which is kind of cool.
absolutely. And I would actually even argue, and I think Murad made the same argument, that a lot of altcoins that come to the market, like even deep tech kind of altcoins, they have meme value in it because you're basically talking about a future reality that hasn't happened and that's going to happen in 2 to 3 years. So people are still investing in it from the community perspective because they believe that future reality is going to happen. And so in a way, even the altcoins that are deep tech focused have mimetic value in them. And so, yeah, it's a very different perspective, and it was very eye opening.
And the smart projects who are really hardcore, they are super good at memes too. For example, my brother Don, they're building like Initia, right? It's like a super cool project, super technical, but they even hired a full-time on-chain meme lord. Like the guy literally just create memes every single day on Twitter, which is absolutely banger.
That's so funny. Yeah, our community is super into memes as well. So I posted some fun ones recently. Yeah,
I saw that.
it's just fun.
I saw one of your like a pitch. I forget on which major stage, but you even have one of the memes in your official slide, right? And it's funny you said like there's a lot of cool memes in our community on stage,
Yeah.
which is which is pretty funny. I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, the
Mm,
community is what matters the most and supporting you, right? So if nobody believes in what you're building, it doesn't matter that you have the best technology. People still need to believe in it, and so it's important to really work together and make the community everything and central to the network, because you can't be decentralized if you have like one person following you. That's not decentralization.
yeah, that's not at all. Yes. Um. Next, I want to get another story from you. This time, I want the story to be one of the most interesting story on your journey building zero gravity labs. Right? That the story can be about anything. It can be you taking a risk, making a bet, fundraising. It can be silly. It can be fun. But give me one story that Michael did on his journey of building zero gravity, and this is only something that only Michael can do. And those are like all those stories that you've done in the past who that made you who you are today. Just give me the most interesting story that you can think of.
Well, I don't know if it's the most interesting, but since we're on the perspective of personal development and growth, the reason I became an entrepreneur actually is because I fundamentally started to recognize that the life that I was living for somebody else. So this was maybe right after Bridgewater. I got into meditation, I got into inner work, I was doing a course called Landmark Education. And one of the realizations that I had is that the reason I was miserable in my previous jobs is because I was doing it for an achievement basis. And I wanted to achieve and get into a particular job, or university, whether it was like, Bain and Microsoft and like Bridgewater and all of that, because I felt like I'm not good enough. And I wanted to prove to my father that I'm good enough for him. And as a result, I was making choices that were just around that achievement, but forgetting about myself in that whole process, who I am, what I care about. And so, like, all the grades, all the like achievements were not in alignment with what I fundamentally wanted to do. I mean, of course, I learned a ton and I loved some of the work as well, but I wasn't happy. And that unhappiness created this need for me to want to get into more alignment with myself, more in touch with who I am, more comfortable and confident with who I am. And then recognizing I was living this not lie, but the story of my dad, And actually, I called him up when I recognized that, and I was just like, hey, Dad, I never told you I love you. So first of all, I love you, and I recognized the story about me, and our relationship like completely changed from one day to the next, because then I was like, okay, now we can build a possibility or a true way of being with each other that's unique and authentic to us. And by the way, I want to start a company because I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur and I want to do something good for the world. And so it really came from that spark of being like in alignment with myself. And then I became very kind of mission driven and wanted to see a specific change in the world. And so a lot of the hard times that I had to face, I go back to that thinking and that power that I got from that recognition. And no matter how hard things get, I know I'm in alignment with myself and I'm in alignment with a mission, and I'm going to power through things.
This is beautiful. I almost wanted to interrupt you and ask, what do you really want when you shared that? But besides being an entrepreneur, what do you really want? What is the most meaningful thing? What is your core motivation that drives you to wake up every single day, hustling, just building like a company toward its future?
Yeah, I want to see a society that's full of abundance, full of joy, full of enlightenment and self-development. And so that inspires me a lot, because I think with AI and Web3, we have the possibilities of creating abundance for everyone, where maybe in a couple generations, it's possible that we don't have to work for a living anymore. It's more about how do we grow as human beings and how do we become the best versions of ourselves. So life fundamentally changes. It changes from like, I don't have enough to I have abundance and I can become the best version of myself. So that inspires me a lot because I want to see it.
Counter argument. I'm just trying to play the devil's advocate, right? Do you think
Sure.
there's a possibility if we all have abundance, there's no more eager deep inside ourselves to fight for more and then therefore to improve? Because I feel like a lot of people is gonna say, because I don't have much, and that's where my deep desire comes from for the hustling, for because I feel like a lot of people, if they already earned it, right? Let's say they already become like a millionaire, or if they already entrepreneur, have like a very rich mindsets, right? Knowledge, or basically their life is in reach, no matter on the physical world or on the psychological world. But like do you get what I'm wanted to say? But like basically, as long as if everybody have like a boundless life, people lost their desire or eager to fight harder and to actually become a better version of themselves.
Yeah, this is kind of the Wall-E argument. Like, if we have abundance, are we all going to be in like chairs and only watch entertainment and like not do anything useful for society? And to some extent, there's truth in it. But on another end, because there's truth in like human beings want to enjoy more, they want to have some like even hedonistic kind of tendencies. I want a bigger boat. I want a bigger, I want my own airplane and all of that. So there's a want and need for more. But then the counter story to that is, if you look at the story of Siddhartha or the Buddha, he had everything. He was living in a palace. But the thing he didn't have was a perspective of self-enlightenment, a perspective of understanding truth. And I fundamentally believe that when we take away the material,
everybody can
yeah, exactly. When you take away the material constraints, then people will want to tend to higher forms of themselves, self-actualization, enlightenment, all of those things.
This is a good thought experiment. I like that. and yeah, I feel like although Buddha or like these like saint people, they were the minority in the past. But I think if they can do it, why not everyone can do it? If they have similar amount of like, let's say, material world resources, right?
Exactly. And what is the material world really? I mean, physics describes it as like vibrations of underlying fields. So is reality really material? I think I forgot the exact source of this, but if you put all of the like matter that's truly there of the earth, it fits into like a cube or something, like a small cube. So the material isn't really material. Yeah.
It's just like different perspective of how we're seeing it.
Yes, exactly.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I'm also really curious about where do you think we are heading to next? Let's say put it in the crypto space or blockchain space, right? In the next 3 to 5 years. And where do you
Yeah,
see Zero Gravity Labs to grow, or the role that Zero Gravity plays in the future of the 3 to 5 years?
yeah. There's a couple of things. One is infrastructure in the Web3 space is finally at a level where you can have true mass adoption. And we've built some of the key components for that to truly be at cost and performance parity with centralized systems, so that you no longer have to worry about, oh, it's a decentralized system, it's like less performant. That no longer has to be the case. The only thing that should stand in the way is physical constraints, like the speed of light. So if you have like multiple servers across the world and there's a speed of light constraints, then, and you have a 3-hop consensus, for example, then the latency, you can't get below, let's say, 100 milliseconds. But if you have a more regional approach and then you have like regional validators, you can still achieve the same thing as in Web 2, for example. So the infrastructure is finally at a level where that's the case. So I think Web3 is going to move towards more application level building. And then in the AI space, it'll take 2 to 3 years for Web3 AI to catch up with centralized systems, because there's still fundamental research questions like, can I do batch and asynchronous training? Can I do it in a low latency environment? Can I do it across heterogeneous compute? Once we figure that out, then all of a sudden we have way more compute available to us than any of these companies individually, like OpenAI or Google. And so the types of models we should be able to build in the decentralized context should be better. Even if you just take it to an extreme and say, instead of building really large scale, large language models, what if we build 1 billion small language models and then put them together? They should, in theory, be significantly more performant. And so that's where I see the kind of in the next 5 years where Web3 AI will head. We will start using the blockchain superpowers and really impact the AI space positively.
And that's why you guys are building Zero Gravity, to empower that, to empower all these individuals, millions, mini language models, to be possible.
Exactly. Yep, well said.
Awesome. I think we are actually heading to the end of this episode. But the last question I always ask my guests is, please show whatever you're building hard. Show me hard. What are some exciting things on your roadmap? If I'm a user, I'm an enthusiast in Web3, how can I contribute to the community? What are some things I can start to do today, right?
Yeah, because we had to build the core infrastructure, what you can do today is basically work on the storage layer and on the compute layer. And then soon in the next few months, you basically will be able to also participate in the service marketplace, is what we call it. So essentially, anybody can register as a service node. So it could be a OPML, ZKML provider. It could be kind of deep end providers that provide certain things. And what that then enables us to do is that we're really the connective tissue between all of Web3 and AI. Right now, if you're a builder in the space, you have to go to like 10 different sources and like patch something together. But you compare that to an OpenAI experience, you've got all the APIs like easily available. You want fine tuning, okay, great, it's there. You want like inference, okay, it's there. You want to work with Sora, you want to work with kind of the image engine. Like it's all available in one place. So why can't we do the same thing in Web3, but in a fully decentralized, permissionless way? And so really making that developer onboarding experience super simple so you can build whatever you want in the Web3 AI field.
This is beautiful. Thank you so much. And here we wrap up the Tales of Web3 Season 2, Episode 7 with Michael, the co-founder of Zero Gravity. Salute. Thanks for joining.
It's super fun. Thanks for having me.